Hey MFL managers, it's Bruce Lee and I just did the unthinkable. I went undefeated in my division and made a quarter-final cup run in the Metaverse Football League. How? By building an unbreakable defensive fortress. In this video, I'm taking you through my entire journey from pre-season planning to lifting the title. You'll see how I built a squad around high defense players, the key moments that defined our season, and tips to create your own fortress. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet got involved in MFL and you are looking to get started, then make sure you use the referral code highlighted on the screen. It can also be found in the description of this video. When you sign up using the referral link and you spend $25 in the store, you will get a free player. I will also get a free player, but if you use my referral code, then I will give you that free player as well. So spend $25 in the store and get 2 players for free. Absolutely nothing by using my referral code. So what are you waiting for? Get signed up to MFL today. Back to the video. Before the season even started, I had one goal: build a team that's impossible to score against. We all know the saying, defense wins championships. So I decided to stack my squad with players who excel in the defense attribute. I decided early on that I was going to be playing the 5-4-1 and I'd target players who fit within that formation. The first thing I did was put out a message on the MFL Discord asking fellow managers to loan players that fit the criteria I was looking for. The number one criteria, obviously, was players with a defense rating of 65 and above. All of their other attributes didn't matter, so long as that defense attribute was high, because that was the main purpose of this team. As I was playing in the Spark division, I wanted players between the overall rating of 60 to 64. This was to ensure my team would at least be competitive in the division while also maximising the conditions for progression. Finally, I was asking for a maximum of 5% rev share per player with no game clause. I was happy to give up the 100% of the team's rev share as end of season rewards wasn't my goal here, but keeping it at 5% per player would ensure I'm able to build a full squad that would be capable of competing through the season. Over the following days, I was contacted by a few managers and I wanted to give a special shout out to 3 in particular. First up is Silent Slick, who loaned me the 64 rated goalkeeper Kuntz. He'd go on to be our keeper for the cup run, while also getting a few games in the league. Next up was Zuta, who sent me a defensive midfielder, an attacking midfielder, and a right midfielder, who all performed very well for me through the season. And finally, HEGE Sports Agency, who loaned me a total of 9 players, basically covering my entire defensive positions with 3 wing backs, 5 centre backs, and another defensive midfielder. I want to say a massive thank you to all 3 of these guys for helping me out. It shows how great the community in MFL really is, and I hope you are all happy with the extra chunk of revenue you received on rewards day. This video might not have been possible without you guys, so I just want to take this opportunity to again say thank you very much. So after that, with a large chunk of my squad taken care of, I added Johannes Schreiber, who is the very first player I packed when I got him out of the free starter pack that I received for buying the club promo at the end of season 4. Unfortunately, he's had 0 progression this whole time, but with a 66 defense attribute, he was a perfect fit for this team. Not at left midfield, but as my starting striker. That's because finding a natural striker with high defence was quite challenging, and the previous season, despite going down to a 58 overall, I used him exclusively as a striker in one of my other teams, and he massively overperformed at that position. As you'll see later, this season was no different. I then hit the marketplace and picked up this little gem for $12. Osvaldo Escobar looked to be a very versatile player, and he would cover the right mid and striker spots for my rotations. As an interesting side note, he's 65 overall at right back, but the 5-4-1 doesn't need that position, so he'd only be used in the other 2 positions he's familiar with. At this point, the squad was looking really good, and I just needed a couple more pieces to finish it off. That's when I found this absolute gem on the marketplace, Emmanuel Aquino. This guy cost me just $4, and quite frankly, it's probably the best $4 I've ever spent. Yes, he's 29 years old, but with that 74 defence attribute and the ability to cover attacking midfield and left midfield, I had to snap him up. As you'll see later though, considering how I performed in this team, it was an absolute steal. At this point, the squad was almost complete. I just needed one more goalkeeper and one more left midfielder to make sure I had the full rotation for an 18-man squad. So, thanks to adding some of my own players and the generosity of the three managers I mentioned earlier, I had a little wiggle room in my rev share to hit the scouting market. Finding suitable players was fairly easy as I just entered my criteria into the filters and sorted by the defence rating, finding the two players I needed on auto accept contracts. Big Willie Adams joined us as a 64 rated goalkeeper from well-known community member Calvinator on an 8% contract with a 2% 16-game minimum clause. He'd become our main goalkeeper in league matches. Then last but certainly not least, I found Kleber Ibarra, the final piece of the puzzle. He also came in on an auto-accept contract, this time from Gogurt, and it was quite a steep one at 10% base rev share with a 5% 18-game minimum clause. However, he was worth every single percent. Of course, the 76 defence rating is what attracted me to him to begin with, but with 90 pace and 77 shooting, it seemed like a no-brainer. This guy was easily the MVP for the season. So with that, the squad was complete. I give up a total of 83% of the team's rev share, with an extra 7% if I didn't meet the game clauses. While I didn't give up the extra 7% because I met the game clauses easily, it does highlight the importance of getting all of these players in without a minimum game clause, because I'd have never been able to stay under the 100% rev share budget without it. There was a level of trust required from those managers who loaned me players without it, and I'd like to hope I repaid that trust when everything was said and done. With the squad built, my next task was to begin creating and testing tactics using the methods I mentioned in my tactics video. The link to that video can be found in the description for this one if you haven't watched it already. My main aim was to concede as few goals as possible, sneak some 1-0 wins, get a bunch of 0-0 draws, but what I ended up creating was actually something very surprising, as you'll find out soon enough. I had considered not showing the tactical instructions in this video on the chance I continue this team in the following season. However, I've already tested it on the new engine and it doesn't quite work the same, and I'd have to overhaul it anyway. So I've got no problem showing you this now. For individual instructions, I set all of my defensive players to have low position freedom. That's the centre backs, DMs and wing backs. I didn't change any other instructions for them. I told my striker to have high position freedom. I did set some other position instructions for certain players, like telling Ibarra to shoot more because of his high shooting stat, or Escobar to dribble more because of a good dribbling stat, but other than the position freedom on the defensive players and the striker, everything was set to use team instructions. In possession, I told them to play direct and hoof as many crosses into the box as possible. I initially thought my attacking chances would be minimal, and so getting the ball into the box any way we can seemed like a good move. I also told them to play fairly narrow and dribble less. Out of possession, I kept it compact, told them to trigger the press more and clear the ball more often. The directive was obvious: don't mess about on the ball and hoof it. The setting that made this tactic so effective was telling them to play a high line, almost to the top. I initially used a deep line and it gave me good results, but that little tweak changed this whole thing around as I began destroying teams in the friendlies I was playing. That said, friendlies can only tell you so much, and I needed to test in a semi-competitive environment before I was fully prepared for the season. So I entered them into the Wendeck Pre-Season Cup at the 700 overall bracket. At the time, the team was sitting around the 680 mark, so I knew we'd face some teams who'd be better than us rating-wise, and so it'd be the perfect place to see how we stack up. The group stage went okay, as we beat Penova Storm 1-0, got a forfeit win against LAFC because they didn't have a legal lineup, before being absolutely battered 4-1 by Sporting Alicante in the final game. Interestingly, Sporting Alicante were in the same ice division as my main team, so while I didn't like the fact we conceded 4 goals, I wasn't too disheartened by it, as we managed to qualify for the knockouts by coming second in the group. I did another couple of tweaks to the tactic and was looking forward to seeing how far we could get. This was definitely the turning point for this team, as suddenly the performances went right up and we just started winning and winning and winning. 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. It didn't matter to me that it was only by one goal every time, because that was my original aim. But what I was pleased with was the consistency with which it was happening. And when we beat Porvoo Athletic in the semi-finals, I was actually excited. However, that all ended in the final, when we were beaten 2-0 by Up in Smoke. While a loss should have been disappointing, I was very, very pleased that we come second out of 256 teams, and I knew we were ready for the season to come. When the projections were released, I was happy to see we'd been drawn into a competitive division, and I'd get to fight it out for promotion with a number of strong teams. Being projected 5th wasn't a bad spot, and I knew that meant I'd likely be fighting for those playoff spots. I was nervous on the opening game day, as our first opponent was none other than Trust the Process, who had the strongest squad in the division and were projected as title favourites. I needn't have worried though, as a 74-minute strike for Ibarra meant we got the win in a game where we were actually quite comfortable. It remained comfortable as we easily won the next 4 games, scoring a total of 14 goals and conceding none. The first game in the cup was disappointing as we drew 1-1 with RB Recife, conceding our first goal of the season. It's ridiculous to think I was disappointed with a draw, but I soon got over it as we won the next 2 cup games by a score of 2-1. While the cup goalkeeper Kunz might have been conceding goals, Big Willie was keeping them out, as we kept getting clean sheets in the league, including an important 1-0 victory over promotion rivals U-Boot Werder Bremen. In fact, it wasn't until Game 8 where we conceded our first league goal in a 2-1 victory over Juventibus. While we were near perfect in the league, we suffered our first defeat in the cup group stages against Punta del Este, who beat us 1-0. However, there was no need to panic, as we won the final group game and qualified for the knockouts on top of the group. While at the halfway stage of the league, we had a 100% record, scoring 29 goals and only conceding 2. In the second half of the season, we continued right from where we left off, getting those all-important wins and also beating Kuala Lumpur Tigers 2-0 in the MFL Cup knockouts. But unfortunately, that's as far as we got in the cup. In the quarterfinals, we took on Wild Cobras, and as you can see from the stats, we absolutely dominated the game. We didn't manage to put the ball in the back of the net though, and the game ended 0-0 after extra time, sending us to the dreaded penalty shootout. Kuntz was absolutely phenomenal here, saving a number of penalties, but our own penalty taking was woeful. So when Kuntz stepped up to take the 9th penalty, I knew the script was already in. From hero to villain, he missed the decisive penalty, and that was us out of the cup. In the league, we did follow that up with 1-0 wins over Atletico Nova Era and Chan Chan Guardians, both challenging for the playoff spots. But then we dropped the ball and lost our perfect record with a 0-0 draw against Marstad Legends, a team fighting for survival at the bottom of the league. This was another game where we absolutely dominated, but just couldn't find the back of the net. As an interesting side note, due to trying to make sure my best lineup was out for important games in the league and the cup, this was the first game where I used players who were under 92% fitness. Broderson, Giuliano, Foster and Escobar were all considered fit, but under the threshold that I'd usually sub a player out. Given the weakness of my opponent's squad, I thought it wouldn't matter that much. Was this the difference that meant we dropped our first points in the league? Who knows? But I thought it was an interesting note to mention. We then drew 0-0 again a couple of games later, but our opponent was Trust the Process, so a draw against the strongest team in the division wasn't too disappointing. We then finished out the season rather comfortably and were crowned champions after an undefeated season on 62 points, winning 20 games, drawing 2, scoring 54 goals and conceding a measly 6. In fact, there was only one team who scored more than 1 goal against us, and that was SPV GG Firth, who we beat 4-2 in the second half of the season, though I think that had a lot to do with Bondarchuk getting a red card in that game. Thankfully, we were already up 2-0 by the time that happened. Some other interesting stats. In 22 league games, we generated a total of 41.98 XG, with an average of 1.9 XG per game. We generated 14.45 shots per game with 5.27 on target per game. The really wild stats are on the defensive side. Our opponents managed to generate a total of 10.62 XG over the course of 22 games, averaging out at 0.48 XG per game. They had a total of 73 shots, which averages out at 3.31 per game, with only 21 of those on target, which averages at 0.95 per game. While the attacking stats for my team are surprising, I think those defensive stats show just how effective building a squad based on defense really is. There were 11 games where my opponents didn't even get a shot on target, and 2 where they didn't even get a shot at all. I truly did build a defensive fortress. That being said, the attacking side of the team really helped with some unreal production. Schreiber scored 19 goals in 20 games, doing the exact job I brought him in for while coming third in the Golden Boot race. Aquino scored 13 goals with 14 assists in 21 games, coming second in the Playmaker Award. Escobar managed to win that award on the final day with 12 assists and 13 on the season, to go along with his 10 goals. In the Golden Glove race, Big Willie Adams narrowly missed out on the award, but keeping 11 clean sheets in 16 games is nothing to be sniffed at. I did mention Ibarra as my MVP earlier with his 13 goals and 7 assists, and that's because he had some very important goals, turning 0-0 draws into 1-0 wins with his contributions. Finally, we'll take a look at progression. On first glance, it doesn't look too amazing, with +2 being the maximum overall anyone went up by, but considering most of these guys were in tier jail when I brought them in, I wasn't expecting huge gains. I think guys like Matos and Costa did really well, going up steadily throughout the season, while Giuliano looks ready to burst right out of that tier jail as soon as possible. Henkoff and Aquino were definitely the most impressive and saw the most gains in terms of attributes and overall. Hoff especially looks as though he's got plenty more progression to come now that he's become an uncommon. Unfortunately, guys like Broderson, Schreiber and Ibarra didn't move a single point in anything, despite unbelievable performances on the pitch, and maybe that's a sign there isn't much potential to grow for them. Despite that, the aim was to put the players in the best possible position for progression, and I think I delivered that. So I'll be keeping my eye on 1 or 2 of them in the future to see how far they go under different conditions. So, that's how I built a defensive fortress and went undefeated in MFL. It's not flashy, but it wins titles, and that's the most important thing, right? I'm currently in 2 minds about what to do next season now that this team is in ice. Do I just recruit new players who are at the ice level and run it back and see how it does in ice? Or do I sell this club to buy another Spark club and then try the same experiment but with a different attribute? I'm thinking a squad built on pace might actually be pretty interesting. But what do you guys think I should do? More importantly, which one would you guys rather watch? Would you rather watch me try the defensive fortress in ice, or would you rather see me get a Spark team and try it with pace? Up to you. Let me know down in the comments and I will probably go with whatever the consensus is. In other news, me and 2 other members of the community, Big Mr. K14 and Root Coors, are thinking about starting our own MFL podcast in the near future. I think we're calling it Yorkshire Tea and XP because all 3 of us are actually from Yorkshire and all 3 of us love progression. So be sure to look out for that in the near future. But that's everything for this video, and if you enjoyed this one, please don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell for future MFL videos. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.